This is a topic that hurts my soul. I don't want to talk about this, but there were a few articles that brought this up, and I was like, okay, I mean, it's something, it's a thing, and it's not that bad or ludicrous of an idea to consider might actually be a possibility, so even though this does kind of hurt me deep down, it shatters the inside of my soul to be talking about this. Let's talk about the Vancouver Canucks and the possibility of trading Andrei Kuzmenko. Now, believe me, this is not the first time we've made videos suggesting that he might be traded or could be traded or even should be traded, but just every time it's brought up, it does strike a chord within me because there's so much that Andrei Kuzmenko means to the Vancouver Canucks. And before we get into the topic, I feel like this tangent is one that's appropriate to go down because when it comes to the Canucks and their story of free agency, they always seem to go out there and mess it up. It's been like this for years. I think the only last free agent that was good, quote-unquote, for this team was, dare I say Thomas Vanek? Vanek was great, Radim Verbata was good, and then all the other ones, you can't tell me Jay Beagle was a good acquisition. You can't tell me that Roussel was an amazing acquisition the Vancouver Canucks made. Tucker Poolman, Tyler Myers, all these names, none of these guys were great. But the only one that really came out here and signified that the Vancouver Canucks do have it in them to acquire talent, to acquire players that actually mean something and that can actually make a difference in the lineup. It was Andrei Kuzmenko, at least not since Radim freaking Verbata in 2014. The Canucks have had such bad luck when it comes to signing free agents and having those free agents not be all too great that this one right here, it's a blessing. And in fact, I guess you could say the rest of the other ones have been blessings as well, but not to the same magnitude. You could say that it was a win the Canucks signed Lazar, you could say it was a win the Canucks signed Oman and Dakota Joshua, but those guys are not Andrei Kuzmenko. And so, when it comes to the idea of the Canucks trading this player away, it does strike a chord within my soul because there's so much riding on what Kuzmenko means to this organization that now when you talk about where the team is and how they might have priced himself out or how he's priced himself out, it kind of gets a little bit frustrating. But at the end of the day, let's go over onto a few articles talking about Andrei Kuzmenko and whether or not he could go to a team like the Washington Capitals, for example. Our first article is the Frank Seravalli Daily Faceoff Trade Deadline Countdown for Eastern Conference teams and their objectives. The reason we are talking about this is because if you go over to the Washington Capitals and you read what Seravalli has to say, he says that their top objective is to secure a top 6 forward. GM Brian McClellan has LTIR cap space, a slew of expiring contracts, and a nearly full complement of draft capital, so watch for the Caps to be one of the teams making calls on pieces like Bo Horvat and Timo Meier. The Caps have little in the way of prospects coming outside of Connor McMichael and need a boost of proven youth. Horvat and Meier could add some serious punch to their top 6, along with Tom Wilson when he returns from injury. Washington has stated they will try to contend for as long as the Great 8 is chasing the Great 1. Side note, very great sentence there, my friend. So don't expect them to sit on the sidelines as they've played their way back into playoff position. And that kind of feels right when you talk about the Washington Capitals. I feel like a lot of what the Caps are doing nowadays really just serves the purpose of getting Ovechkin as many freaking goals as humanly possible, but that's neither here nor there. Let's go over onto another article on dailyfaceoff.com because Frank Seravalli also has himself the NHL 2023 countdown for the Western Conference teams. If you scroll down to the Vancouver Canucks, you could see that the conversation has started up about them wanting to open up some cap flexibility and how they might go out there and trade away some guys. Let's skip to the halfway part of the paragraph over here. As yet another Canucks season swirls down the drain, talk about down the drain, eh? The big question is which pieces they will entertain to move between now and March 3rd. Bo Horvat, who is on a 62-goal pace, is the #1 player on our trade targets board. But who's next? Is it Brock Boeser or Kuzmenko, who needs a big bump in pay? Can the Canucks find a way to move off Tyler Myers' contract? There's value in Luke Schenn as well. Vancouver is burning through the bridge deal of Elias Pettersson, seemingly the only untouchable player of the group. You then had yourselves another article on NHLTradeRumors.me discussing the two teams, how Washington is looking for a top 6 forward, and Vancouver has a guy in Kuzmenko who is a top 6 forward and who could be on the move. Since joining the NHL this season, I'll leave a link by the way in the description to all 3 of these articles, Kuzmenko has been very good and is a legitimate top 6 winger. However, the excellent start to his NHL career may price him out of Vancouver, so the Canucks could look to move him while his trade value is high. After all, in 37 games played this season, he has 17 goals and 34 points. Saravelli also noted that Kuzmenko may be a player who Vancouver moves, so we'll have to wait and see if the Capitals decide to make a major push for him. On paper, it looks like a perfect fit, as it would allow the Russian winger to play with stars like Alex Ovechkin and Evgeny Kuznetsov. Now, I'm going to go out there and say that's a pretty big upgrade from going out there and playing with Vasily Podkolzin, who isn't even on the team anymore because he got sent down to the AHL. Andrei Kuzmenko has been a legitimate beast for Vancouver. As the article stated, 35 points now in 38 games played, 17 goals and 18 assists. He has been an absolute gem for my fantasy team, on pace for 74 points in 81 games played. We already made another video talking about how Kuzmenko is on pace to having a similar season to Artemi Panarin, even though Panarin was a tad younger when he came over from the KHL. But ultimately, this is the one matchup that I feel makes a lot more sense than any of the other ones. If the Capitals are looking for a top 6 forward, my mind immediately clicks and says, hey, why not Andrei Kuzmenko? Now, to be honest, there is a world where I see the Canucks holding on to Kuzmenko and keeping him around for next season, because realistically, he is a guy that has such good chemistry with Elias Pettersson, and he is a really good player. Like, I can't stress this enough. When it comes to the offensive catalysts on the Vancouver Canucks, I would argue that Kuzmenko is more dynamic than Brock. I'd argue that he works harder than Miller. I'd argue that he's more skilled than these guys too. There is such a good talent profile out of this guy. The only problem is he's only making $950,000 a season. Now, we have seen the agent Dan Milstein come out here and tweet out dollar sign emojis whenever Kuzmenko scores like multi-goal games and everything. But there have also been reports saying that Kuzmenko was signing here because he wants to sign here. He didn't go to Vancouver because he only plans to stick around for one season. How he actually wants to stay here for the long term. But if he keeps on playing the way he's playing, this guy's going to demand a pretty significant raise. And I'm not talking like $4 or $5 million, maybe even like 6, 7. If you want to go the point per game route, maybe even 7.5. Kuzmenko has been so effective and so good that you could realistically argue that he is worth way more than what some of the other players on the Canucks are right now. He could say, hey, Brock Boeser is making 6 point something, and I'm way better than that guy, so why can't I get 7.5, for example? The only problem I see with a Washington team potentially being interested in a guy like Kuzmenko is that they don't really have too many assets that I think the Canucks should actually value. I mean, they have Connor McMichael, they have Hendrix Lapierre, they have some guys that I think are good prospects, but the Canucks, in that position of looking for younger-ish players who can make an impact today, may only have limited options with this team as a trade partner. You'd have to focus on draft picks, and to be honest, the Capitals probably are not going to be bad anytime soon as long as they have Ovechkin, and as long as Ovechkin is getting a goal a game pretty much, and a hat trick sprinkled in there once in a while. But at the end of the day, when it comes to Kuzmenko, like, personally, this would be a really interesting opportunity if he were to play with Kuznetsov and Ovechkin. It probably wouldn't work as a line. I mean, Kuzmenko can play both wings, I guess, but Do you really want to stack up 2 right-handed forwards with Kuznetsov there? I'm not really too sure. You can let me know in the comments, though, if that is the move. Should Washington acquire a guy like Andrei Kuzmenko? But talk in the comments either way all your thoughts about the idea of them being interested in him in the first place, whether or not this could actually work out, and what you think the Canucks should get in return if it is a Kuzmenko trade to the Caps. So let me know in the comments all your thoughts. Links in the description as well to all 3 articles. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.